Welcome to the Village of Westmont Committee of the Whole meeting for January 12th, 2012. We have a call to order, please.
Mayor Ron is absent tonight. Mayor Pro Tem Emery.
Here.
The clerk is here. Trustee Fleming.
Here.
Trustee Klebanow.
Here.
Trustee Nero.
Here.
Trustee Scott.
Here.
Trustee Seneca.
Here.
Manager Searle.
Here.
Attorney Zemanek. He's not here
room,
yet.
I imagine.
Police Chief Mulhern.
Here.
Public Works Director May.
Here.
Engineer Nicole.
Here.
Deputy Police Chief Gunther.
Here.
Acting Finance Director Parker.
Here.
Acting Community Development Director Malik.
Here.
And Acting Fire Chief West.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The village board minutes. On Monday, we will consider approving the minutes of the combined committee of the whole meeting and the village board meeting of January 3rd, 2012. There are no open forum requests tonight, so we'll go right to the report. On Monday, we will have our employee service awards. Madam Clerk.
I just have condolences to one of my former employees in the clerk's office. Ann Miller's sister passed away, and the wake is tomorrow at Modell's, and her name was Agnes Braun. And the wake is tomorrow, like I said, at Modell's from 4 to 8, and then on Saturday there will be a Mass at Holy Trinity Church at 10 a.m. So just want Ann to know we're thinking about her. Okay. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll see if Mr. Zimnick has any report tonight when he arrives. Village Manager, Mr. Searle, please.
Thank you. Just two items. I'd like to request an executive session to discuss personnel following the regular meeting, and wanted to note that I passed out a supplemental purchase order list that actually has a corrected purchase order on it to our self-insurance pool, IRMA. The dollar amount on the agenda was $306,030. This is represented our annual contribution. We did some further looking at our budget preparation, and we have the option of applying a credit against our actual costs, and the finance director recommended an adjustment to that, so we'd like to substitute this purchase order. There will be funds available in the budget, but we don't want to draw down our credit balance too far, and that's the reason for that adjustment. So I'd like to make that correction.
Anything else?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Trustee items. Trustee Scott.
Thank you. I'm just looking at this for the first time now. There's a discount prescription card program that the village is offering through the National League of Cities, and it's now available through the village. Village is partnering with the National League of Cities to promote a prescription drug discount program. The program offers savings on prescription drugs to residents who are without health insurance, a traditional benefits plan, or have prescriptions that are not covered by insurance. The card is free to all residents, regardless of age, income, or existing health insurance. By using this card, you may save up to 20% off the regular retail price of prescription drugs at participating pharmacies. And you can go to the village website, it gives you this information, or you can go to the other website from Caremark, it's www.caremark.com/NLC. Some of the participating drugstores that are in town, I think all of them are. It's Osco is going to participate in it, Walgreens, and Westmont Pharmacy.
And the information is available here
At the village clerk's office?
and at the
Library.
Park District, at the Senior Center. I believe they might have it in both places.
Actually,
We took it over there.
community
The library too?
And the library.
Community center.
It's a good program.
Are we going to put it on the website under something with about the prescription drug discount card for residents?
It's actually listed there as a press release right now, and it's 2 or 3 headlines down. It's pretty visible at this point.
Okay.
And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks. Trustee Seneca.
Thank you. The public safety meeting that was regularly scheduled for this Monday is being moved to January 19th. It's a very lengthy agenda. It's also going to be held this time at the Police Department down at 500 North Cass on the second floor in the training room. Everyone is welcome, and that will begin at 6 o'clock. And that's all I have this evening. Thank you. It's January 19th.
Trustee Nero.
I have nothing tonight. Thank you.
Trustee Klebanow.
Only like to, I can't do it for Monday, so I'd like to wish Trustee Scott a happy birthday at the end of the month.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Many, many more. And the meeting, since it's being moved, then I take it Monday, there is nothing for 6 o'clock. Is that correct? We just come here at 7 then?
There's no other committee meeting.
Okay, thank you very much, and that's all I have.
Trustee Fleming.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of items. First of all, even though our public safety committee meetings are extremely important, it's more important that residents go to the comprehensive plan meeting on Thursday, January 19th at 7 o'clock at the Park District 55 East Linden. We desperately need and want your input on what you see and what you think and what you want to have happen in the future of Westmont for the next at least 10 years. So because we're looking at things that we envision for the town, some of the things are pretty radical changes. We really want the residents' input because that's more important than anything else. So if you have to forego the public safety committee meeting, please do so and go to the comprehensive plan.
And since the village board isn't invited to the
we are
comp
not
plan
there
meeting,
so that we cannot
maybe we can all come to the public
influence
safety meeting.
We won't be, they don't want us there, and we're not going to be there.
So there.
They don't want any influence over the residents, so that's good.
Which is good.
The second thing is one of the residents pointed out in an email to the board and an oversight that we had in one of our recently enacted ordinances, so I would like to put it on the agenda for the next committee of the whole, is our curfew ordinance. Instead of it, anywhere we use the term parents, can we also put and/or grandparents so that it covers when the tykes are out with their grandparents?
Isn't it covered in there, or responsible adult? I thought we covered all of that in there. I didn't pull it and look at it.
Also,
though.
I think the chief had suggested maybe that be added to the public safety committee agenda for the discussion.
Thursday, we're thinking of that. They're bringing it back in front of the board for their consideration. And I saw the same email. The reason is that when a parent gives permission for, say, a 19 or a 20-year-old to go out who may not be a responsible adult for the juvenile or for the minor. That's why it was restricted to just a parent, grandparents, or it doesn't. I don't think there's anything else for a reasonable adult. We were thinking also to one option I was going to suggest to the board is do you put something like an age limit in there of being 21 years or older, something like that. So either a grandparent, or that way you could have the same situation for an aunt and uncle, a family member approved by the parent, 21 or even 22 or 25 years of age or older, whichever the board would see. That was going to be our option. But yes, it is a matter that it was brought up in the email so the public was aware that technically a grandparent could be out and be in violation of the ordinance, and we didn't want to put our officers in the position of having to violate the ordinance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it needs to be tweaked. We're not going to change the times that we so laboriously worked over, but we're going to tweak the personages of having kids out late.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good.
That's all I have for this evening, so we will go to new business. Item number 2 on the agenda, Falcon Villas subdivision, stormwater management. Board to consider an ordinance allowing the village to accept ownership and maintenance responsibility for the stormwater detention basin and related outlet sewer system at the request of the residents of Falcon Villas subdivision.
Good evening.
Good evening. To present this is our Public Works Director, Steve May.
Falcon Villas subdivision is a townhome development, 23-lot townhome development. So each lot has a 2-unit townhome on it, located on Benedford Drive on the south side of town. The development as designed has a unique stormwater management system. It has stormwater detention like any development would have, but the detention basin isn't on a separate lot. It is actually, all that area highlighted in yellow is 100% of the stormwater management easement, and it is one big, long L-shaped basin. The bulk of the volume is stored up on lot 23. This is one big lot 23 right here. And so the deepest portion of the basin is there, but as soon as that, I think it's like as little as 2 feet deep, the rest of the easement area floods together and becomes one, continuous detention basin throughout there. It is serving stormwater management for the entire development on both sides of the street. The outlet structure is in a sewer that is located in the bottom of this basin and runs through a pipe on an angle onto this other property, which is actually at the Westmont Fire Department. And there's another detention basin over there for that development, and it ultimately drains out to Cass Avenue and west to St. Joseph's Creek. The issue with the maintenance of this basin has to do with the fact that the outlet structure with the restrictor in it is located in the basin, in the catch basin that is in the bottom of the detention basin. So when it does plug, it has the inability to access it to clean it out. So the only recourse is with Public Works assistance, we go out there and pump it out and get the trash off the end of the restrictor and let it drain down. But sometimes that, not sometimes, most of the time that isn't for 2 or 3 days after the storm event. So if it's a significant storm event, it might be a while before that gets drained down. And in the meantime, 100% of these 10 parcels on the west side of the street all have their yards inundated, and it's next to impossible to maintain the turf in the backyard because it's always saturated. So with that, and because of the reoccurring involvement, we've discussed the maintenance of the basin at Public Works Committee more than one time over the past couple of years. And lastly, we invited the residents to the Public Works Committee that was held last December regarding the maintenance in here, and we had a very long discussion about many issues, and many that were in attendance at that meeting are here tonight too, regarding the unusual layout of the subdivision as far as having that many parcels that share a stormwater detention basin. It's not uncommon, it's not against code, but it's typically a 2-lot or a 4-lot subdivision that you'll see a detention basin shared in the backyards, and this is a little unusual. That and the fact that it's very difficult, if possible at all, to maintain the basin. I know there's great efforts done to maintaining it because there's screens added to the detention basin and other to the catch basin, to the beehive structure. That there's a lot of effort trying to keep it from plugging, but there's multiple ways the trash can get into the storm sewer system as well and plug the restrictor. So the biggest difficulty, or in my opinion, is that it can't be maintained because when it's inundated, there's nothing you can do about it. And the ideal location for the outlet restrictor would be in a manhole that is not underwater when it's an issue. So at the top of the berm, somewhere on the high ground, if that was relocated, that is one way to either minimize it from occurring or be able to stand there while it's going on, make sure that the restrictor is flowing, and let it drain down at the rate it's designed to do by the engineering release rate. It's at considerable depth, and there's great expense with that, and it wasn't built into the original design of the subdivision. So all of these features added together, and the discussion at the Public Works Committee meeting came to the consensus, at least of the people in attendance, that their request is that this property is subdivided and, I assume subdivided, but the maintenance of the detention basin be turned over to the Village of Westmont for well, perpetual ownership and maintenance. So that is the request tonight.
Mr. May, we've been handed several maintenance alternatives as to what could be done with that.
Yeah, I sent that out in the report packet for the January meeting that we didn't have. That was just kind of to serve as an outline of the discussion that was intended to be had at the Public Works Committee meeting, and we got through some of it in parts, but it is all the different options for the ongoing maintenance of that detention basin, with the one at the top being the one that is the actual request, the subdivision. So there are expenses involved with installing the other outlet structure or moving it, and that by itself should, if not all of it, relieve 90% of the issue that's going on out there, because like I said, the problem that causes all the maintenance and all the inundation is the fact that you can't keep the restrictor clean. I meant to add the basin itself is very, there's not much depth in the catch basin that's the sewer catch basin that's in the bottom of that basin, so the restrictor's got limited ability to how it can be oriented, and it's not ideally situated in the pipe either, based on something we'd require by today's standards. So actually we wouldn't, permit it to be on in an easement like that anyway. It's not a requirement, but you've had other conversations at Building and Zoning Committee since, and we have ongoing conversations about changing that and the permanency of requiring either a homeowners association or some other built-in maintenance mechanism into the actual building code.
Now, some of the alternatives require an expense from the village to bear, so that the people who aren't familiar with this situation, who don't live there but are watching at home on TV, is this a situation that exists in other places of the village, or is this pretty much an anomaly? It's an unusual situation that exists at that one location.
It's not unusual in that we do have many locations. I don't know if Kim would have a good inventory, but we have dozens of smaller subdivisions that we do have maintain detention basins in detention easements on private property, and that's very commonplace. I don't know of, do you know of any other examples that would be of a development this size?
Indian Trail subdivision. It's a townhomes, and it's...
So up on an Indian Trail subdivision on the north end of town, on their south property line that borders the detention basin that's on an unincorporated Liberty Park, all that detention is across all the backyards as well. But they have a townhome association as well. There's no active association with this development, so they take on that maintenance from the mowing and all the maintenance.
And because you are most familiar with this situation, what is your recommendation?
Well, the recommendation has been all along to install a structure either on the high point of that berm so that it is on dry land so that it can be easily maintained, and there's an expense involved with that. That could be done, but then we wouldn't normally do that as part of public improvement. It is always the private developments or somehow their maintenance responsibility. So if the structure was installed in the top of the berm, that still would be on their property. One of these alternatives says install the structure, put it on the fire department property, and then that would make it the village's maintenance responsibility. But that is something unusual and not has happened before. So the recommendation is to move the restrictor and build the structure. I don't have an opinion as to where it should be located. Their request is that we take that on.
Okay. I'll open it up for discussion by the board before we hear from homeowners' comments, unless you have something else.
No, there's a lot of interconnecting parts, and I can get into detail in any section that you want, but it's a good overview of what the request is.
When this subdivision was built, was there ever an intention to have a homeowners association there?
I don't have personal experience with that, but from the conversation at the Public Works Committee meeting, it is the residents reported that it was actually marketed as the plus being that there was not an association and there were no dues, and that was one of the selling features of the development, was that they did not have one by design.
So who would have been in charge of maintaining all this from the get-go then?
All the individual property owners have the responsibility for maintaining the detention basin of the portion that lies on their property. And the owner at Lot 23 has the unusual burden of maintaining not only that entire parcel and that much detention basin, but the entire outlet structure, including the restrictor, is on that property. And it is difficult to keep it, being saturated. If you've been by there, you can see all the high brush growth in there as well. So in these alternatives, you see all those different costs. These aren't even all of them. There's any combination of in between all of these that can be done or parts of. But the clearing of that, the clearing costs that you see in there, $6,500, was an estimate that code enforcement got one. I think it was. I forgot the date, but it was earlier last year when we first had the discussion about the maintenance of that basin, what it would cost to restore it back to plan. But there's really no point doing that if you don't solve the problem that's causing it in the first place. Can't really read that, but.
Do we assume the property tax or the village would be reduced in property taxes come to the village if the village took over the property, wouldn't it?
It would be taxed.
I assume so.
Exempt, right, I'm
Village
saying.
owned it.
Right.
Yeah, the current property owner would no longer have that tax burden.
So their property taxes
Would be reduced. Well, it is one lot. There's a unit, there's a building on lot 23 in addition to this L-shaped basin. So that's another point. The request was to subdivide this part of lot 23 and take this portion of the basin, but in fact, it is just that portion of the basin just on that lot. The detention basin is actually this shape, and it covers 10 parcels.
Now, when you have when we look at the alternative about regrading all of that, does that include each of those lots being regraded?
No, those lots are graded correctly as far as I know. The bottom of lot 23 has a lot of weed vegetation, unwanted vegetation that's grown up there. Some of it's significant that when that all gets cut out and you have to grub it, you'll have to get all the roots out of there and regrade the bottom of that basin. Okay. So the clearing and regrading is just to restore lot 23 back to the design grade.
Yeah, because I was back there and I see all of the swale back there and the fencing, to allow for that.
You can see all the fences all have marks on them where the high water normally sits. This is a kind of a enlargement of just lot 23 and just the detention basin, and these are contours. So every line represents 1 foot in depth, and this being the bottom of the basin that I was referring to. So this is where all the regrading would occur, because like the rest of these parcels, this stays wet and it's not easily mowable. So I'm sure that's what got it to the condition it's in today. Unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but by today's county and best management practices and putting wetland type plantings in there, this might be a desirable promoted type of detention basin bottom, like a soggy bottom type basin, kind of like we did at Muddy Waters. But it is not part of the design of this basin, so we don't know to what extent it's affecting the volume of water that can be stored in the entire detention basin as a whole. There's no way to measure that.
Is the boundary of that fenced between that basin and the fire department property?
No, I believe there's a fence line across the back here. This is open. You can walk through this. This is the top of the berm where this red dot is. Here's the property line, and this sewer in the bottom. It's further away, but that's the sewer in the bottom of the basin at the fire department. So you can walk through here, and then there's other backyards for Ashford subdivision. The single-family homes start immediately to the north of this.
The reason I ask is because if we were to adopt the alternative of taking over the property and doing what was necessary, obviously we want to keep maintenance as easy as possible for the for Public Works to get to the property. So if there...
We were going to take responsibility. I would be insistent on installing the structure, but you would not, well, if we own the property, it wouldn't matter. That's the best place to put it. If we did not own the property and still wanted to participate, we could build the structure, move it out on this side of the property line on our property. We would be the owner of the manhole. We would be the owner of the restrictor. We would be the owner of the keeping it clean. But the property still stays the property of all the individual property owners as it exists today.
Yeah, but the problem you have is, I mean, and I understand we're saying the property owners, but what I also got at the Public Works meeting is there was some discussion to ask to share the burden and the cost of this particular parcel. And one side of the street was pretty much in agreement with it, but the other side of the street doesn't want anything to do with it. I think the whole issue, what we're dealing with here is, I think we have a resident of our village that has an undue burden upon him to maintain this basin, keep it mowed, keep it cleaned out, keep it dredged, whatever it is, without any kind of income whatsoever coming in. I mean, the builder that built this project to begin with wasn't exactly what I want to call a real high standard company, Polo Builders. And I mean, unfortunately, you know, it's a case that, and granted, I think the comment was made, yeah, there's other cases in the village where you have this on private property, but not a project this size.
Or borne by one homeowner.
Or borne by one homeowner.
I think it would be difficult to sell that home.
Right. I mean that would be the other part. And I think there's probably a lot of other things that went into play. That, I mean, I don't want to get into any of that stuff. I think the main thing here is that, you know, to me, I think this is an undue burden upon an individual. I really do. And granted, we have to make tough decisions a lot of times, but I mean, I don't see how he should have to live with this burden the way it is right now. I mean, granted, you know, we may have to take on some cost and deal with it, but
which alternative would you prefer? That the structure be moved to our property and we maintain it from there and he continues to maintain the basin part, or should it be regraded and we pick up the mowing and maintenance? What do you think?
I think that parcel ought to be subdivided off and we take it, because I mean, if in the future, if he decides to sell this, even if we move that structure onto our property to maintain it, that cost is still going to have to go to a potential buyer of that property. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it doesn't bode to just have that structure built on our property on the fire department side,
right,
to take that.
And the plat looks like it could be easily subdivided without an undue burden. And his lot would be similar to his neighbor's lot at that point. So, and we will open it up to hear from you in a couple of minutes. Anything else? You want to hear from the homeowners at this point? Mm-hmm. Okay. If you have anything, please come up to the microphone and introduce yourself by name and address, please, so the clerk can put it in the minutes. Thank you.
Tom Sainer, 1020 Beneford Lane. We just agree with Trustee Fleming, and we just want to say that when this subdivision was built, it was there were other people. None of you folks were around, and there was other people running the village at that point, and we want to make sure that you understand that we agree with Trustee Fleming that the people that were in charge then should have put this together differently. This gentleman should not have this burden. Originally, it's my understanding, I wasn't there either, but that this was actually a lot that was for sale. And at the end of the day, he couldn't sell it, so that's where he put the basin and this structure that your public services director was talking about. And it just shouldn't have been put together this way. Polo Builders should have insisted on a homeowners association. The Village of Westmont maybe should have insisted on a homeowners association to take care of this, or there should have been some other thing done. But the way it was set up, and like Trustee Fleming says, this guy goes to sell this piece of property, and it's never going to happen.
I think
And,
actually and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, or Kim, if you know, it was a lot that was to be for sale originally, and then when the final engineering came in, our consulting engineer recommended, or actually said, you needed more detention, and that was the developer's solution that they presented to the village at the time, and it was approved.
In the preliminary subdivision approvals, that was a platted lot, and it was still to have the detention across the back of all those basins. Final engineering isn't done until they have subdivision approval from the board, so they go do the design, and they got all the way to the end, and they couldn't fit the required volume in, and that had to be detention, so it wasn't a buildable lot. And keeping in the theme with not having an association, instead of calling that a lot, they just combined it with Lot 23 instead of having a Lot 24 and put it in an easement to mirror what was going on with the rest of the parcel, so that it stayed private, so that they did not have to have an association, is my understanding of how that went.
So the person who lives next to it now, was he living there at that time, or somebody, or was that?
When he bought this piece of property, he didn't even know that this whole situation existed until the closing. And at that point, actually, there's some discussion about whether it was before the closing or after the closing, but I mean, come on, you're going to close on a piece of property, and now you're saddled with this at the closing. And even if it was before, it's my understanding it was after the closing that he found out about it. I mean, just not the way to do it. And not to mention the fact of, you've visited the site, but you haven't visited the site when there's 4 feet of water there.
Seen it.
And
Oh, yeah.
the
I've
odor,
seen it.
Yeah, the
Oh, yeah.
odor and the mosquitoes and.
Yeah, I go to the farm the back way because I live on the other side of Casper.
Okay, so you know.
We cut
You've
through
seen
it a
it.
lot.
Okay, so you know, and I mean, it's really sort of almost disgusting,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the water's got to move. I mean, it's
Right.
bad from, nobody wants stagnant water.
Right.
There's 100 reasons why it shouldn't be sitting there, so we
Well, that-
understand it.
That's all I have to say. I think maybe some of the other neighbors might say something, but I think it's just the only ethical and
Okay.
right and moral thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, ma'am. I'm Mick Durkin. I used to be the superintendent on the job. I live on the job myself at 1042. And Bob is right. The homeowner on 23 didn't know until closing that he was supposed to have that lot. I realized that at the time that he did because they were hiding it from me. Polo Builders was hiding it from me. And just to reiterate what he said, I agree with him that he did not know anything about that lot. And I did find out that lot at the end, lot 24, only could be half-used. And so instead of using half-used lot, he donated the whole lot, made it final.
I think more than a donation, it was more of a tack
Yeah,
on.
right.
Yeah.
I didn't mean a donation, but that's what it was.
Thank you.
And also, on the grading issue in the backyards, we graded off, and I had to take 200 loads of dirt out of the back.
Wow.
That's what made that soil so big and so wide.
Yeah.
And I was told by Polo Builders now, get the dirt from Falcon Plaza, which is another subdivision
Yeah.
2 blocks away. Take all the dirt out of there and grade off. That's what I did. And then we had to take all that dirt out. So we had homeowners that were really upset about cutting the power, their drain tile, which was, everything was screwed up. Yeah, So, that's all.
Okay. Thank you.
There might be others, but just Polo Builders is the not all subdivisions is the developer the builder also, and this is one of those cases where they were also the builder. So there was a whole nother set of issues that came with that, building construction too.
Anybody else?
My name is Robert Ivanelli. I own the retention basin. I've owned it since 1996. I've maintained it since 1996. I've approached this board on many occasions about assistance. They have come out when water was not draining properly. It has cost me over the last 16 years in excess of $21,000 out of my pocket to maintain it, to pay for the cutting of it, to build 15 sections of fence that I didn't have to build, but to keep the fence line up on the back of the property. We had to replace the drain that prior administrations okayed that was installed incorrectly. That was another $3,000. I had the entire basin hydro-seeded and planted with recommendations from the Parks and Recreation gentlemen. Those trees that you see growing there, a surprise to me. That cost me $4,000. I had to put a retention wall up recommended by the village to maintain the grade of the retention basin because my lawn was just washing away. That cost me $3,200. And roughly 180 cuts at $40 a cut. So I think that because of the prior administration's ignorance and corruption, I've been burdened with this. I've had to go down there many times and lift a 200-pound SUR cover so I could get in there and clean it myself because I felt the responsibility that my neighbors shouldn't have lakefront property.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the board considering taking this burden from me, not only for future sales. I'm 64 years old and it's getting hard to do.
Would you be willing to have a subdivision of the property, so what was lot 24 goes to the village? Your total square footage of your property would be much less than what you purchased, obviously.
Yes, I would prefer, that would be wonderful, and my lot size really wouldn't be altered, because when I first purchased it, that lot was never indicated that it was going to be a retention basin. Polo Builders was kind of a shifty operator. They were very deceptive. It was never put in the plot survey. I learned of my ownership 5 months after closing. I was supposed to be in there in May of '96. I didn't move in till November. My house was sold in Westchester. I had to rent a home for that period of time. I had to put all my belongings in storage. There was never any compensation from this builder at all. And I'm sure if you talk to some of the residents that have been here since day one, they'll have horror stories that equal or surpass mine. But it's just a matter of there's no place that I'm aware of with the law firm that I contacted. There's no place, and this situation does not exist anywhere, not only in DuPage County, but in the state of Illinois, where one homeowner is responsible for the runoff of 23 duplexes, which is 56 units.
I think we're pretty much in agreement that it is a burden upon you as a homeowner. The issue will be voted on Monday night. What it reads is, board to consider an ordinance allowing the village to accept ownership and maintenance responsibility for the stormwater detention basin and related outlet sewer system at the request of the residents of Falcon Villas subdivision. I would like to amend that so that it includes a subdivision because just ownership of the basin, it's got to be, you know, we're not going to, I'm sure you'll understand we are not going to set a precedent of maintaining a stormwater basin on private property.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Okay? So I would like to see the wording that it's, first it's subdivided, and then we take over the ownership and maintenance. Now, the other thing is, typically in situations where someone subdivides, they have a purchase price for their lot. I'm going to guess, and please stop me, other trustees, if I'm wrong, that since we are now taking a burden off of your hands and assuming the maintenance of what was a expensive proposition, that you would not expect to be compensed for giving that burden up.
I want $1.
I'll give him $1.
It could be a deal breaker.
I'll give you $1 right now.
Yeah, because most deeds do say $1.
I think $1 is fair.
So we got about 15 cents a piece right here?
No, I don't want it in change. Also, could I make one other statement, please? Sure. Considering that I owned it, I did put up a retention wall. I believe it is on my property line, but I can't guarantee that. And my neighbor who's to the north of me, Reuben, who's actually a single-family home, and he's a terrific guy, he's a great neighbor. He had a retention wall put up on the back of his property. And at the time that they looked at it, he asked me if he could encroach on my property like a foot. And I gave him permission to do that. And the only thing I ask of the village is that if my retention basin is on that lot, I mean, if my retention wall is on that lot, that we just move the property line a little bit. I don't want to have to knock this whole thing
Yeah, we're
down.
not gonna incur and rebuild and all that. No. I'm sure there can, you know, we will.
I just don't want to be faced with any more
Mr.
additional
Zemanek
costs.
will do whatever it takes to get this done in a orderly and efficient manner.
For purposes of an ordinance, can we make this more conceptual? Because we still need to get to the point of getting a written agreement between yourself and the village, getting a subdivision survey. All of that needs to be accomplished before a vote has any real meaning, so they really know what they're voting on. Right. But it sounds like we've got all the groundwork for an agreement, and we can move forward as quickly as engineering can get it done.
Because the deed has to have the legal description. In order to do that, we have to do the
No,
survey.
I would definitely want that for proof in the future that this is not part of my lot.
And that was probably my fault in preparing the agenda. I knew we were going to have a conceptual discussion this evening, but we were kind of used to the terminology we use as an ordinance, and we recognized after the agenda was prepared, we're not going to really be at that point where we can actually approve an ordinance, but we have a consensus in terms of where we want to go, and we can come back and approve that ordinance.
So we won't be voting on Monday night, but do you get?
Yeah, we'll vote on the concept.
Vote a motion.
Vote on the fact of what we're going to do.
Okay.
Yeah, and give us
All right.
direction to develop the ordinances, you know,
Yeah.
pending the legal
Okay.
stuff we need to work out.
Yeah, it won't be
I think we
final.
pretty well
I mean,
know
you
where
know,
it's
we've
gonna
got
go.
some i's to dot and t's to cross.
That's fine. It's been 16 years. Another month or two ain't going to make a difference.
Okay. And we got to get that $1 together, too.
And,
so.
One more
Take a
question,
check.
just to define what we're doing, and for you too. We can turn the projector back on. We talked about his parcel, and he was talking about the retaining wall and the neighbor having a retaining wall too, but the whole time we've been talking about this, I'm envisioning a subdivision like this.
Exactly.
So you would still have some detention in the easement?
Oh, absolutely.
To the west? Okay.
Behind me.
Yeah, all right. I didn't know what we were calling behind.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I know that all
So
this.
this is what I'm talking about.
Right.
All right.
That's
As
what I'm
if his
talking about.
original lot 23 that he thought he was, that's what you were.
Yeah, I think it was, 200 by 35.
Yeah.
Very good.
And it turned out to be 200 by 200. Okay, listen, thank you all for your concern and compassion and interest in this. I appreciate it.
Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
in. Will you take a check?
I do have a question.
What was that?
Will you take a check?
I don't think so.
Trustee Klebanow has a question.
I just want to make sure now, if it goes through and we own the detention, the entire backyards of those 10 lots are part of that detention. Is there any problems that could come up because those properties could obstruct coming into our detention. I just want to make sure.
My understanding is that proper cleaning out of the restrictor, and when Steve takes it over and gets it running and fixes it, those properties will drain properly, so there won't be a...
But we will not be owning and maintaining those.
Right, we won't.
It's more of an overflow area as a backup.
Well, it's a flow path, and I just want to make sure
Yeah, it's just like
if
there's
anything
natural
happens.
flow on just virtually every
All
property.
those easement areas, they're in the subdivision plat is the provision for the stormwater detention easement. So all of those 10 parcels all have the same recorded provision for what's shown up as an easement on their property. So all those restrictions don't go away and that stays apply. We just become one of the 10 owners.
I just want to make sure and that we've got it on camera and tape
Oh,
and
all right.
verifying things.
So it's the owner's
Dotting the i's, crossing the t's.
It's the owner's responsibility to maintain the back of their yards.
Right.
But because an easement's present, if they fail to and there's a complaint and they fail to respond, the village would have the right to go in and maintain it and lien the property.
And that can all be made into the agreement.
It's already
there. Easement's already there.
Okay,
There, yeah.
okay. I just want to make sure it stays there, though, that nothing's getting changed.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next item, and so those of you who were here for this, we won't consider it rude if you want to pick up.
Do you want to go back to John?
I'm passing.
Did you think that? Did you forget? I thought it was the snow.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's what I would have gone with.
Thank you.
He's got a lot on his mind. It'll be a long haul, but he'll be okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good diagnosis.
Which one?
Give him a pass.
Okay. But it wasn't...
I'm going to back up on the agenda for a second here, because Mr. Zemanek had to follow the plows to get here. So the attorney's report, please.
I actually thought we were starting at 7:30. I was here early, I thought.
We're trying to help you.
I know, move the meeting forward. I have something to add to the agenda for Monday. Night Corps finally responded and agreed to their ordinance and their agreement that we provided. They provided to us and we provided back to them and said, is this okay? And it took them a month and a half and they finally said, yes, the documents we prepared are acceptable. So I'd like to have that on the agenda for the natural gas use tax and the agreement with Night Corps. The only thing we're waiting to hear is they did not like the use of the word natural when we refer to natural gas in the title. It's not in the body of the ordinance, and that's our last little debate we're cleaning up with them.
What would they like to call it?
Yeah.
Just gas.
That could be methane for...
Why? What was the reason? Did they give a reason?
No, they don't like to give reasons. Just obstructionness.
Something unnatural about it.
It's just not natural.
It doesn't sound
That's
good.
all I have.
Thank you.
I thought ComEd was bad.
All right, item number 3, 324 North Richmond, lot coverage variance request. Board to consider an ordinance approving a greater than 30% lot coverage variance request in a defined moratorium area.
Good evening. Tonight I'm joined by Catherine and Ray Sodoma, who own the property at 324 North Richmond. And they're here this evening because they're requesting a lot coverage variance. I'd like to go over a few of the key dates leading up to why we're here this evening and a few of the numbers that we will be discussing a little bit further. The board will recall that the Sodomas appeared originally before them back in October of 2010, and at that time they received a variance for a corner side yard setback in order to accommodate their addition. That was approved October 16th of 2010 to be specific, And you'll recall as well, that was going through the zoning process at the same time that we were considering the moratorium area, which the moratorium still allows for up to 30% lot coverage in the portion of the community that the Sodomas reside. However, it was reduced from 40 to 30 due to that change. That took place September 20th. When the permit came through after the village board approval for the addition and that front yard setback variance, a permit was issued on October 28th of 2010. So staff honored the 35% lot coverage, which was in place at that time. It was during the inspections on the property that it was discovered that a paver patio area had been installed on the east side and north sides of the home, and that had not been taken into account or shown on the permit drawings. So it was completed without a permit. We requested that that be surveyed so that we could get a certified lot coverage calculation on it. The number that the surveyor came to was 35.9%. That had a discrepancy with the number that staff originally had, which was 37.9%. Following the public hearing last month, the numbers were recalculated by staff and we came to 36.8%, so it still doesn't jive with the numbers provided by the surveyor. But the average of all three, this is kind of an art, not always a science, the average of all three is that number that we came to actually that third time, which is 36.8%. There had been some discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on whether or not the planter area had been included by the surveyor. That was one of the things that staff thought may have been omitted originally. Even if the planter was omitted and not, or excuse me, if it was not counted as impervious, the lot coverage would still be 36.2%, so it's really only a 0.6 reduction. So tonight, the homeowners are before you. They're requesting your feedback on the request to maintain the paver area as is. So again, that would be lot coverage of approximately 36.8% based on that estimate of the three methodologies.
So we're talking about 1.8% more than the original 35%?
Right.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that.
We, it's our fault that we didn't get a permit. We'd never built anything before. And once we had our meeting and got it approved for the addition, we got a contractor and he was taking care of all the permits and everything. So when it came time to decide what we were going to do with the outside, the landscaping, besides having this big mess finally taken out of the yard, the contractor and the landscaper that the contractor had called to do all the ditch digging and stuff like that, the berms and whatever had to be done. The contractor and the landscaper and I stood out in the yard and tried to decide what to do, because in the past the overhang hung over and we couldn't even get plants to grow on the porch, really, because it was too dry there from the overhang, and there were a lot of big trees in the yard. So we were trying to decide what to do in that area to make it simple so that as we get older, it would be easy to maintain. So the contractor and the landscaper both said, well, why not use paver bricks? So we started talking, and the more we talked about it, the more we ended up with this patio area. Neither one of them ever said anything to me about, you'll need a permit for this. And since it wasn't under the original contract with the contractor for the price, it was something that we did separately with the landscaper. And obviously it's our fault that we didn't have a permit, because we should have. And we talked to Shannon and she said, wait and we'll get the permit or do whatever we have to do after this meeting. But as it is now, the only thing I would request is that you would allow us that extra so we don't have to take it out, because it really truly was an honest mistake on our part not to get the permit. And secondly, when we did consider all the options, we were thinking about the fact that Westmont has paver bricks around the trees here, and we saw an article in the paper that said water drains through it. we know that there was a discussion about not any more concrete because it's not permeable. So we thought paver bricks would be a good idea. And then we went to Good Sam Hospital the other day, and they have a whole parking lot in paver bricks.
Yes, they do.
So, I mean, we had a lot of rain in June, a lot of rain. And we never had standing water for more than a few hours after. I mean, the ditches were still full, and our patio had drained.
That's one thing I asked the landscaper when he came out. I said, you know, I says, this has to drain. Does it drain through? And he says, oh, yeah, no problem. And I was kind of a little leery. And he even put a little lip around the paver bricks to keep them in so they don't fall out, so they don't.
So the water didn't run off, it went down.
It went down, it has to
Did
go down, it
exactly.
can't go out.
Yeah.
It has to go down because there's a lip about that high all the way around it. And it does drain, because I witnessed it, and I couldn't believe it, because I thought, uh-oh, if it doesn't work.
In fact,
He told me, he says, you know, if it doesn't work the way you want, he says, I'll come and take them out.
Wow.
You know, he says, I'll take that lip off of there, but it works.
Yeah.
I think in June, we had a pretty heavy rain.
Very heavy.
At that time.
And the fact, the meeting
And
that
it
we
drained.
went to, was it last month, I think? The one where they approved it, even though it wasn't unanimous. At that meeting, one of the members from the commission stopped by because it had rained all day that day and there wasn't any water standing in it. So we really feel that it's not going to be a problem as far as the water in our area. But I'm hoping you'll approve it. Thank you. Any questions? I mean,
Well, I think it's on the opposite end of the area that has the flooding issues.
It
You
is.
couldn't
This
get
is
any
way
farther
south.
away than what it
You're
is
way
right
on
there.
the south side of that.
So I think, like we did with that house on Blackhawk,
Exactly.
where we
Same
allowed
thing.
them to put in the addition on the back there, this doesn't affect anybody, and it's 1 point something over, and I have to say it
Permeable
was
pavers,
a,
I have no problem with it.
your addition in your front yard and everything looks tremendous.
Looks nice.
Nice addition to the
Looks
community.
very nice.
Thank you.
What's the goal when we lowered the percentage of lot coverage was to keep things contained with slight variances if necessary, and clearly that's where he falls. So, anything else from the board? Any other public comment? Going once? And we'll vote on Monday.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Item number 4, 143 South Cass Avenue, special use and development requests. Board to consider ordinances approving the following requests in order to operate a resale/consignment shop in the B1 Limited Business District. Special use permit, development permit, and commercial masonry waiver. Ms. Malik.
Yes, thank you. Tonight, we have Mia Curtis from Cash Closet with us this evening.
Resident of Westmont.
She was at the December Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and the special use request was granted a recommendation of approval at that time. I'm going to turn things over because she's very lively and has much to tell you about her proposed use of the property. Everyone will probably recall that this building has been vacant for a number of years, maybe about 5 years or so at least. And it was last occupied as the adult daycare and then the Montessori school.
Which my son went to. I'm Mia Curtis, and I'm opening Cash Closet, which is not just a consignment store. It's new, old, funky, and cool, anything that I think can, you know, sell in the store. I have vendors from Italy. I carry men's clothing anywhere from $50 to $650. Women's clothing, the same. Jewelry, accessories. This is my first store I'm opening. My second will be in Scottsdale, Arizona. My partner there is from Arizona TV Station 7, Cable 13, Lisa Cipriano, and we are going to be all over the media there. Channel 5 has asked to do an exclusive story on Cash Closet before we even open. I had cancer, and when I was recovering, I'm actually a hairstylist, I just started selling off my closet because I was so bored sitting at home, sick. And that's kind of how it started. So I give back to different breast cancer charities. Zoraida Samblin to Dancing with the Celebrities. This year I gave 44 bags of clothes away to people in our community. That's pretty cool. Because my stuff is so high-end, I can give away, very nice Gap, J. Crew, and the people seem to be real happy to donate. So I'm just kind of happy to be alive and have a purpose again. And I want to be approved. I want to, you know what, I live here and I want to have my store here. I used to live in Hinsdale. I could have my store there. I could have my store in Clarendon Hills. I think that this town is really shaping up, and I think you're going to like what I bring to the table. Lots of giving back.
Mia, would you explain to the people watching at home, because they don't have the benefit of the application that we've seen of yours, would you explain about how part of your process with Cash Closet is to go to people's homes? They don't have to, come to you, you'll even go to them.
Many of the women don't want to be known. There are people in financial straits right now. I go into huge homes and they want cash on the spot. You can either do cash or consignment. It's a very personal thing. People do not want to know. We also have a wheelchair ramp, which was huge for me after cancer and everything that I've seen. So I'm kind of happy to say that you can come and use our bathroom and use the wheelchair ramp and shop.
I think that that structure, it used to be a single-family frame house.
That's correct.
Years and years ago. So I think for what you're setting up, it will be, it will appeal to the funky side. It will look really neat.
I'm going to plant the whole front of it. I made my mother buy 49% of my company here so I can keep going in Arizona. And so my mom's going to keep my books for me and do all the planning and, keep everything looking just stellar while I stay behind the computer and work.
Good.
I sell online, too. That's how my business started.
Yeah,
I needed to know that I could pay the rent before I could. So there's 2 separate sets of books, one for anything that's purchased in the store, one for anything that's online.
And there's several things I'm sure that Shannon will, work with you and tell you about. I mean, even as innocuous and simple as the Chambers hutch in the train station, where you can put an ad there so everybody, especially in winter while they're all crammed in there waiting for their train.
Absolutely.
They will see your advertisement. So there's all kinds of things that will help. So any questions or comments from the board?
Love this idea.
I also want to let you know that I believe in supporting women going back to work after a hardship. And if our village has one of those women, you send them to me and I will clothe them. I will give them a business outfit, a handbag, and a pair of shoes. I'm very big on giving back. I'm very grateful to have a second chance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public?
When would you be opening?
I'm hoping in 6 to 8 weeks. I've got to apply for my building permit. I know for sure I'm going to do that. I sat in on the last session. And then probably about 6 weeks worth of work. And be ready to go.
Is there anything that has to come before the board as far as the remodeling of the building?
No, just the request for occupancy, contingent with the commercial masonry waiver.
Yeah.
So that's the only
And I'm putting up simple walls in there.
It's B1, right?
Yes.
So she would qualify for a facade grant or
yes,
side grant for any kind of life safety improvements,
in fact,
things like that?
the property owner.
Have we talked to her about that?
Yeah, the property owner has been in to apply, thinking of doing some siding
He's
work.
residing the whole house.
Right.
We'll be putting an awning on it. I think you're going to like what we do to it. It's going to be very cute.
Yeah, so he already has those application materials.
Excellent.
It already had a fire system in it, didn't it?
Do you remember if
Yes, they had to have everything because of the Montessori school.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's sprinkled, though, is it?
No.
No.
It just has, I think it just has
got
a
smoke,
strobe. It's
heat
got
smoke.
strobes in
Right,
there.
that
Yeah,
would
it
be
should
the
have the heat
requirement.
sensor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
That's it.
Good. Sounds
You need
very
me here
exciting.
Monday night. If you have any questions, I'm happy to come. I don't know if I'm, do I have to be here Monday?
You don't have to be here.
No? Sure, everyone? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mia. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Congratulations, it's a great idea. Love it.
Thank you.
Number 5, 203 North Cass Avenue, special use and development requests. Board to consider ordinances approving the following requests from In the Bag Recording Studio. special use permit to operate a music school in the B1 Limited Business District. And they could actually be the best dressed music teachers, I might add.
What can I say?
The development permit request and the commercial masonry waiver. Welcome.
I think you have the second most enthusiastic presentation to come this evening. This is Mike Kaplan from In the Bag, and before I turn things over to him, I just wanted to go over a few details because the application was expedited due to the way the meetings fell this month. If we didn't get him before committee tonight, he would have had to wait till February, and they're in lease-to-own negotiations with the owner right now. So last evening, the Planning and Zoning Commission did hear the request for the special use permit. It was unanimously approved at both the EDC in December, and last night there was considerable discussion about the soundproofing, obviously, because this is a amplified instrument business. That was a concern that came up due to the proximity to residential and school. Mike, I'm sure, will go into detail with his presentation here. The commission, again, voted unanimously, though, and didn't seem to find that was insurmountable. There's adequate parking at the location. There's a parking lot on the property. This was the old Caderna Engineering office. The parking requirement for the occupancy, the number of people that would be present, was actually just 3, but there are 10 spaces available. And then, of course, there's the nearby public parking lot and on-street parking. So with that, I will turn it over to Mike.
Thank you. Thank you, Shannon. Good evening, everybody. I just want to tell you a little bit about myself and how I got into the business. I graduated from recording school in 1998, and I got right into interning. And I've been an engineer since then. As far as my corporation goes, we started in, after working in a few studios, I opened up In the Bag Recording Studio, in 2004 in Glen Ellen. And after about a year there, we expanded a little bit and we wanted to get a bigger facility. We moved into an industrial complex in Lombard, and we were there for the last 7 years, building up clientele and just kind of getting our feet in the ground. And really with the business like music, it's all about, you know, who you are, your name, and just really trying to build that name up. We started out with our kind of mission statement was professional recording at realistic rates, which basically meant that we wanted to give opportunity to those bands that were, you know, younger bands that weren't really looking to make it big or anything, but we wanted to give them an opportunity to have a professional recording done within their financial, means. And a lot of times, you know, these professional studios, they can get upwards to $125 an hour. So we wanted to have something that they could get a professional product at a reasonable rate. Now, within that, we kind of became a band. We got into band development a little bit because we were working with a lot of younger bands. We kind of started teaching them how to, how to run their rehearsals properly and how to really get where they need to be in order to make it as a musician or performer. And with that, we decided that this is maybe a good direction to go in. You take a younger clientele and you develop them, and you hopefully get them into becoming recording professional artists by the end of their time with us. So it's kind of what we're looking to do here is lessons, rehearsals, band development, a little bit of publishing, which is selling music and that kind of thing, and then recording as well. So basically the way we'd have it is a student could come in being completely novice, not knowing anything. They could take lessons with us. We would take these people in lessons, find other musicians that they would probably work well with, get band development going, and then really get them. By the end of it, they leave. They came in not knowing anything. They leave with a full produced demo. Something to really get them on their way to become a musician. And one thing I just want to talk about now is we're aware of the businesses around us. I've been in a lot of talks with Uncle John's Music because of the proximity. We don't want to step on their toes. When I'm from Clarendon Hills, Richmond, and Naperville, so I would go to Uncle John's to buy my music stuff. So the last thing I'd ever want to do is step on his toes because they've been, they're a great company there. So with that in mind, Uncle John's does some saxophone lessons, clarinet lessons, and some guitar and bass. And that's pretty much where they're at as far as their lessons go. So we kind of want to fill in some of those holes. Vocal lessons, keyboards, drums, and as well as when you take music lessons in school, a lot of times you're recommended to, to get that practice time in, you have a private lesson as well. So that would be along the lines of trumpet, viola, violin, band and orchestra instruments for schools. Then once we teach them the lessons, we get them into, and this would also, people can enter our facility at any stage. They don't have to come in at lessons, but the next stage of our development is the rehearsal development. We try to teach them how to, not to just go in and play their songs. When you're practicing in mom and dad's basement or garage, you can just go and you jam out your songs and that's that. But we want to really develop them, teach them how to rehearse properly and how to get their music to a point where people are going to listen to it. We want to, and that would go into stuff like the way the songs are arranged, stage presence. I'm in a band called 1969, and we played at the Taste of Westmont a couple of years ago. And if you've ever seen this band, you know that we're not just a bunch of guys with guitars standing on stage doing this. It's a full show, it's full lights, you know what I mean? It's definitely a rehearsed product that goes out. And we find that more bands are successful if they have that kind of stage presence and that kind of stage show. As well as working with their basic songwriting, trying to get them where to be. I'm going to be in business with a couple guys who've been producing for 20, 30 years, with some ties to Nashville, Jimmy Buffett, the Grateful Dead, Taylor Swift. And basically we want to take the next step would be take these songs these bands that we're working with and starting to shop them out and trying to get them to major labels and really trying to make a success out of them. Or if they're talented, they're just not into the performing side of it, get them into session work and that kind of thing. So really teach them how to be a professional musician. And this, it's a little bit beyond that too, because if you teach them how to communicate with each other and how to work in a group like this, it's not just teaching them how to be a musician, it's also kind of teaching them a way to live their life as well, how to work with other people. And like I said, with some of the younger kids, we really want to develop that as well. The next stage of the process would be the recording. Now this is where, basically this is where a lot of our entries will become. We'll have some that build up to that point, but it all comes together at the recording stage. We take this and basically the way a recording works nowadays is it's done what's called track-by-track recording, which usually means you have the band do their couple songs together, but then after that you keep maybe the drums and the bass tracks, maybe the keyboards, and then it's all stripped down from there. You're talking about recording an individual guitar and an individual keyboard and an individual vocalist. So really when it comes to the issue of the sound coming out, once we're through those basic tracks, it's just a guy with an amp. It's not a full band playing at that moment in the recording studio. Now, as far as, we'd have two studios in there. One would be Studio A, which would be our bigger room for more of live band stuff and things like that. We'd also have a Studio B, which would be more for voiceover work, commercials, as well as just what's called overdubbing, which would be taking those, when we get to the point of vocals and stuff like that, take them down to the smaller studio, which is just a glorified vocal booth in a control room, and work on stuff like that. You can also do R&B and hip-hop and things that aren't necessarily instrument-oriented down there. Now, we do want to have a small retail area as well. I've talked to Uncle John's about this, and we want to work in conjunction with them. Actually, I was over there today talking to him specifically about this, possibly using him as our dealer. So we would have things like guitar strings, guitar picks, straps, lesson books, things like that, but we'd like to get it all through Uncle John. Basically, that way we're definitely not stepping on his business. If anything, we're bringing him more business at that point. And then we also would just reference if somebody does need to buy a new guitar or something, a larger item like that, we would just say, hey, block down that way is Uncle John's, go down there. And we've been talking, and we are really looking forward to working together. I can refer people to his business. He can refer people to mine as well. Now, the question everybody has is about the soundproofing. How am I keeping this thing quiet? Now, I want to show you a couple things here. First thing, I want to explain to you how a general recording studio is built. Now, it's kind of like having a room within a room or a box within a box. So you'd have the outside walls of the building, and then all the inside walls would be approximately 6 to 8 inches inside. So you'd actually be making the room smaller. So when it comes to it, the basic design, I'll get into more specifics in a second, but the basic design is you'd have sound in a room, it hits a treated wall, goes through the insulation and the studs, that's usually about a 4-inch block, and then you've got about 6 to 8 inches of space to dissipate before it even hits the outside wall. So that's our first line of defense, let's call it. But I want to show you some of these things here. These are some of the specifics we use. Genie clips are number one. These are, you basically take a general framed wall and you'd put channels across it the opposite way. And what these clips do is they slide into the wall, and you actually put the drywall directly on these clips. So now you're adding another 2 inches of space in between. So the theory is it hits the rubber stoppers, the rubber, you know, is great absorbing the sound. It vibrates out in there before it even really gets to the wall. Now that's just step 1 of it. The next step is mass-loaded vinyl. This is basically like it's sort of like a rubber sheet that would be put in between the drywall and the framed wall. And this just gives, like I said, rubber's very absorbent, and it gives another layer of defense in between. So at this stage here, it would be the drywall or gypsum board. Then you'd have the mass-load vinyl, and then that would all go on to the channels, the Genie clip channels. And then, so you have more space there. On top of that, we'd like to work with what's called green glue. This is basically, you would put this on, you take a piece of drywall, you'd have your mass-load vinyl on the drywall, put this green glue on it, and it's another, like a rubber surface for absorption, and then you put another piece of drywall on top of that. So now you have a sandwich wall that's attached to the Genie clips, to the frame, and then the space. And the reason I want to use this brand in particular is one of the hardest sound waves to control is low end bass and that low end of a piano, that kind of thing. This is specifically made to keep low end frequencies from moving. And once it hits this, it absorbs those specific low end frequencies and it holds on to them. Now the last line here is what's called silent seal. And silent seal would be for all the spaces where you, instead of, you know, when you drywall, you put not a drywall, but you put that like mesh on, and then you put that, you know, you spackle it up. Instead of doing that, we would fill the holes, all the seams get filled with silent seal, which is just, it's basically the same as the green glue, but it's just more for caulking, and it's actually to keep, you know, it's like around the bathroom, it keeps it sealed along the edges of it. So that's kind of how we deal with the soundproofing. And it came up last night, and I'd just like to bring it up again, that in our old studio, I was asked last night if I've ever had a decibel meter outside, and if you ever just really checked. And the funny thing about that was, I haven't, because usually by the time you get to your car from the front door, you wouldn't even know there's a band playing in there. And this was a facility with an open garage as well. So the new facility would be even more sealed than the old one. Basically, that's what I have, and I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Why don't, instead of going through all those levels, why don't you just use Quiet Rock?
Well, because it's, well, I want to be sure, honestly. I want to make sure that, I want to keep it as quiet as possible. And some of the low-end frequencies, some of that sheetrock stuff doesn't, it's not specifically made for certain frequencies. So this is just a...
modifications in it.
What's that?
They've made some tremendous modifications in it.
Well, I would look into it then. I would look into it.
I would suggest you look into it, because it's a complete thing. They also still suggest that you use the Genie clips as well as that, and give your gap. Now, as far as a sound deadening product, which you might want to consider putting up against a wall in between the structures, is a product called Roxel, which is an extremely dense insulation product.
Okay.
It's also a fire retardant product, and it is it's a product that is sound absorbent as well. You'll find it many times used in multifamily housing. It's usually in between firewalls and that for fireproofing as well as.
Okay.
The other thing is with your Quiet Rock products, they make them in 1/2 inch, they make them 5/8, and there's other companies out there that are making now that's a green product also.
Okay.
And their products actually go in conjunction with their product as one item. In other words, like what you're using here, the Sealant Seal, I'm very familiar with that, but with the Quiet Rock, they use a product called Quiet Seal, which is actually for around your outlets, is in between your seams, and the product like that. I mean, I would just suggest you look at it, because they have made some modifications, and it may lessen your cost and amount of time and effort that you're going to have to go into.
We looked into that for the last studio, and the difference was it was kind of like you could, with sheetrock, and that we found that it was actually cheaper to build it, you know what I mean, instead of buy it as it was. But if they've made modifications, then it's a little different. I'll look back into that.
Just a suggestion.
Oh, thank you. I'll take suggestions as well as questions.
Are you still operating in Glen Ellen and Lombard, or no?
No. Well, we never operated in Glen Ellen and Lombard at the same time. We moved, but the reason we're not operating in Lombard right now is just because of the end of our lease, and the landlord wasn't looking for a month-to-month situation, and we found the building, and we said, let's just get going. You know, why stay where we're at when we need to expand? Let's get on it. Let's get working on it.
Are you looking at buying the building or renting?
We are. It will be a lease-to-own situation at first, but we're looking within 2 years it'll be our building.
Now, I know that it says in here that if approved, you'd like to be up and running by the end of, you'd like to open early and open by the
I'm ready to open as soon as everything's put through us. As soon as we have all our permits, et cetera, et cetera. I'm ready to go. I have clients chomping at the bit right now.
I mean, being realistic, I don't think that we'd be much in favor of having bands playing without all of the.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't even. I mean, that's step number one as far as build-out goes.
Now,
and also, there's a lot of that goes into the way the rooms, when we put up the walls and we do all this, there's designs to the walls that are part of how you make the room sound better, so we wouldn't be having bands in there without this anyway.
Is there a party wall at the back wall there, or is it It's
an attached, you're talking about the very back of the building, it's an attached garage with no door.
Okay, I'm talking about the wall that runs perpendicular to Cass. Do you know if it's attached to the building next to it, or if there's a very...
No, it's not attached.
Very...
Freestanding.
It's freestanding structure.
Okay, because it's got to be a narrow...
There's a, I mean, it's not attached, but there's a garage of some sort in the lot next door.
Okay, because,
and behind, I think that's that LNF.
It's very close to the building next door, right along Cass.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So if this is approved, the ordinance will include the soundproofing requirement. I believe you said you'd be doing this to every room in the building?
Absolutely. Like I said last night, the sound going outside is kind of a secondary concern for me because I can't have the sound going from one room to another. So let alone going outside the building.
What is the...
Can I just finish my thought? With Shannon, you know, once it's all built out, it's hard to see how it's soundproofed.
Oh, right.
Other than the listen test. Does staff, you know, issue a permit, inspect to make sure that, you know, they're putting in the products that they say they're putting in at periodic times?
That was something that we discussed yesterday through the permitting process. We're going to need to see spec sheets on what exactly they're going to be proposing to use so that we can verify throughout the process that it is as per plan.
Okay.
What's the fire suppression system in there currently?
There is not a fire suppression system. There is an alarm that needs to be fully functional before occupancy will be granted.
Because I'm curious with all of the soundproofing.
It's all fire rated. If that's what you're getting at, like all the treatment and everything is fireproof.
What I would like, Shannon, is that when you get all of the like if you get material safety data sheets on all of these products and look at the fire ratings and just run it through Acting Chief Weiss to make sure we aren't, you know, when you have a gap in walls, sometimes it promotes fire to move quickly laterally and all that. Right. Because you're doing a very unique situation, I'd feel much more comfortable if we have the fire department look at it and say, you know, it has a potential or a less potential or something, just as a...
We actually had a preliminary meeting with the fire department a few days ago, so they're kind of brought up to speed on what to anticipate here, but that's part of our normal course of action too, and the fire department will be the ones to make the occupancy inspection, in fact.
Okay. Great. Yeah, because it's just because of the different wall configuration and the products going in. I think we just have that, we need a comfort level on
Well,
it.
in Lombard, I was mentioning this last night as well. On the inside of the walls, you use sound treatment. It's not soundproofing. It's just something to help the direction of the sound and make sure you don't have weird reflections. And there's really one company that's known as the ones that get past the fire marshal, and that's what we use. It's called a company called Oralex, and they you can hold a match up to the foam, and it just sits there.
Okay.
It kind of shrinks a little, but that won't ignite.
What are we looking for a time frame? Can we know something about what this will do by Monday, or do we have to do we have to go longer as far as, I mean, if we vote to approve it, I personally don't want to vote to approve it knowing there's just an alarm system that has to be hooked up. I'm going to tell you, I want to know what the fire rating is on all of this, so we know whether we've got something else pursuant to code that's got to be installed.
Is that, John, a contingency that could be added for staff to review, or?
You're concerned about the fire rating of the materials that's put in? You know, I guess my suggestion is if you can get that information to Shannon by Monday, that would satisfy the board, great. If not, we can add it as a condition to the ordinance.
I have most of that stuff. I can get that to her.
Okay.
I can probably get it to her tomorrow.
Now, what would happen if someone's in there practicing in a soundproof room and the fire alarm goes off?
Good
In
question.
the last studio, we had strobe alarms in every room.
So there's something in there that would notify them.
Right, and we talked about this a little bit. With the walls going up, we don't exactly know what the room structure is going to, well, I mean, in the prints we do, but, we don't know exactly where where the fire alarms are going to go.
Yeah.
In every room
But I think we're going to have some type of, if it's a visual with the strobe system or something.
Yeah.
Because your
that's
selling
ideal
point is
for me.
the quietness, so, All right, so we'll know more on Monday and see if we can do that.
So
Okay.
you have a set of cut sheets that you can supply us in?
I'm sorry, what was that?
You have a set of cut sheets you can supply us with?
For the fire ratings and stuff like that? Yeah, I can get you all that. Like I said, I hope I can get that to her tomorrow.
Okay.
So definitely by Monday.
Just so we don't need to see it at the fire department.
Right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for your time.
The other thing, I just want to ask real quick, does anybody on the board have a problem with the masonry waiver? The commercial masonry waiver, because this is a frame building and it's, obviously doesn't have the soundproofing that masonry does, but if it's going to be soundproof from the inside. Okay? Thank you. Number 6 on the agenda, 609 North Cass Avenue, special use permit request. Board to consider an ordinance approving a special use permit to operate an automobile service station and car wash in the B2 General Business District.
Last but not least, we have Terry Johnson, who's the market manager from Circle K. They are requesting, because of the change in ownership, to have the special use permit issued in the name of Circle K now that Jewel Express has transferred the property. As part of that transfer of ownership, the Jewel did go through the subdivision plat approval process, which I'm sure you'll remember from last year. And in order to go through that process, there were a number of punch list items from the 2004 Jewel plan development, which were finally resolved so that could be signed off on so that the subdivision could in fact go forward. Mr. Johnson's here if there are any more specific questions. There are not any material changes to the operations, so it'll still be the car wash and fueling center. There were a few suggestions in terms of regular customary hours of operation, no service, no storage, and no sales of vehicles at the property.
John, did you have anything that stood out on this?
No.
Okay, just checking. Any questions from the board?
I think with those restrictions in it, it covers pretty much everything, just to leave it the way it is, not to change. Except for maybe if the pizza place should ever go out, but other than that doesn't turn into a service center.
No, it'll be the same kind of operation it was, just different branding. A convenience store with fuel and a car wash.
Works. It works.
Thanks for buying it.
Yeah, we try to get the things that move quickly up front, but sometimes it's based on where you fall on the, application.
No, that's fine. I enjoyed the
Very
village.
Do you have a detention basin on the property?
Are you interested in buying some new clothes?
Quiz me on any of the
Okay, thanks. We'll vote on that on Monday.
All right, thank you very much.
And you don't need to be here for that.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Number 7 on the agenda, Personnel, Board to consider a motion to lift the temporary hiring freeze to allow the Public Works Department to hire 2 part-time employees. We had gone over this due to the untimely passing of Mr. Barrett, that Mr. May's department needs to move personnel, and that will require lifting the temporary hiring freeze.
Wish I had them tonight.
You could use them.
Yeah, exactly. So anything else on that other than we'll vote on it on Monday?
Right. Sounds good.
Comments from the public? It's gone. Okay, miscellaneous finance ordinance number 18.
Waive the reading. But I do have a question, just a quick one for Ron. When we use the language line, I think our police department uses it more than anybody. Do we ever recover any of those costs? I noticed it was like $302. We don't. Do we budget it, or does it just, so we have a line item for language line? Okay, I know it's an expensive service, but we have to have it. We don't have a choice.
Yeah, you really do.
It's been separated out, has been, I believe, since for the last 2 years since I've been doing it.
That's all. That's all I need.
It's just usage-based for the billing.
Okay,
But there's a budget, yes,
great, thanks.
And in contention with Monday's meeting, we euthanized another dog. So you said you got something going.
Yeah, it's
so-
on the agenda. We're going, to Trustee Clement, we had the coffee at the chief meeting the other night, and was discussed our proposal for how to handle animals in the future. It's on the agenda for the public safety committee.
For Thursday,
Yes,
right.
yes.
Excellent, thank you.
But everybody should be at the planning meeting besides us.
Right, except us, because we're not allowed.
I can move the coffee and donuts over to the,
But we can't, then we can't go. Okay, purchase orders. Manager Searle explained about the change on the IRMA contribution early in the meeting, so we will vote on those on Monday. That said, anything else that needs to come before the board? With that, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session for personnel.
So moved.
Second, Scott.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Seneca?
Yes.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Trustee Nero?
Yes.
Trustee Klebanow?
Yes.
Trustee Fleming?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Emery?
Yes. That said, we are adjourned to executive session.
Sounds good.
Good night, all.